Hey, what is going on, Sumoings? This is Chris from AppSumo here, and today I am luckily joined by Roman, who is the co-founder of Tooltip. So if you haven't already seen, Tooltip is in the AppSumo store right now, and it's an in-app messaging suite that helps you onboard new users, educate new customers, and run in-product marketing. So Roman is going to be giving you guys a walkthrough of Tooltip, show you exactly how you can get the most out of it. Then afterwards, we're going to be answering your questions. What questions you have about Tooltip, how to use it, how to implement it in your business, all those great things. So if you do have questions, feel free to use the question box below the video, and we'll get to those after the walkthrough. But I'm going to turn my camera off, turn it over to Roman, and he's going to get going, showing you guys how to use Tooltip for your businesses. All right, Roman, you are up, my man. Roman, you still there? Roman? It always takes a funny little minute getting these things started. We test them out in the chat, test them in the operations room, and then for some reason it always takes a minute or two to get it switched over properly. So I apologize for all of you sitting there waiting, but we will get this going in just a sec. Can you hear me, Roman? He is messaging me right now, so I am working on getting him there. So Ken, Ivan, I appreciate your patience. All right. So if you guys are already using Tooltip, Roman is just refreshing his screen right now. But if you guys are already using it, let me know in the comments. And if you're not, let me know what your #1 questions are for Tooltip so we can get to those.
All right.
All right. You there, Roman?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. What happened? You just got cut out, got a black screen?
I don't know. Yeah, I got cold cut out of this. Anyway, I'm back. So that's
all
good
right.
to have me
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's see if you're able to share your screen, if the good people are able to see that.
All right, trying this now. Let me know if you can see this.
Beautiful. All right. There it is. Infinite regression.
All right. I'll switch to that. Well, actually, let's just go to our page.
Yep, it looks like people are able to see, so you are good to go. If any questions or issues pop up, everyone just let us know in the chat if the screen cuts out or something like that.
So
but, yeah, man,
let me know when we're good to go. Yeah, please do. Good morning, everyone, or good time of the day, wherever you are in the world. One word of caution, I guess, I cannot hear you. So if something happens, please do let Chris know. My name is Roman. I'm one of the co-founders and the guy who's spearheading the customer success effort. So I'm really interested in helping you succeed with whatever you're trying to do with Tooltip. I'll talk a little bit about what Tooltip is, where we come from, what we sort of built the product for. I'll do a quick demo of a couple of things that you can do. And then we will open up for questions. So let me start very quickly about jumping in, talking about what Tooltip is. So we've always thought of Tooltip as kind of a versatile toolbox for various different use cases. That's why it's called in-app messaging suite for the web. I personally come from a product marketing, product management background, and one of the problems that we personally faced was, messaging our own users, keeping them abreast of changes. getting them up to speed and sort of new features that we roll out, and also notifying them of certain changes that would happen in the product, things that may be moved around in the menu, or some other things that maybe we had before and now we don't have, or certain things that have changed and are now working in a different way. So we sort of built Tooltip around these sort of use cases, and then found out there's actually more use cases that we can cover, including in-product marketing. So we always kind of looked at Tooltip as a versatile kind of toolbox for a variety of different use cases. And I'm going to show you how these work. So without further ado, let me jump into the kind of quick demo. So this is our demo page right here. I'm going to launch the extension, which is part one of the product. So the extension for Google Chrome is where you create, customize, and preview your campaigns before actually publishing them or ever installing them on your website. We've done this intentionally so that it's easy for people who are non-coders, who work in marketing, who work in product management, who work in customer support, to be able to work on top of their website, to be able to create all these campaigns and immediately preview how they're going to work and look for your end users. So once we launch it on the website, if you click plus, you'll see a selection of different messaging campaign templates that we provide. This list is being expanded based on user feedback. Right now we have 9, and we think of them as each one working particularly well for different type of user interaction scenarios. So Tooltips and Hotspots work really well if you want to decode a product term or some jargon which you may be using inside your product, or maybe quickly explain a certain term or certain functionality for a menu item, let's say some sort of a button or maybe a link, which may be not so obvious for users in terms of what they do. Now, slide outs, pop-ups, notification bars, these are model types of messages that we can overlay on the screen. Slide outs work particularly well if you have a lot of information which you want to convey. Maybe you want to embed an image or a video or an animated GIF and a very long text. These things work really well because they sort of sit inside of the page. Pop-ups, industry standard, they can be somewhat intrusive. So we always say use caution when you use pop-ups because they're sort of right in the center of the screen, very loud. And we think of them as really good tools to communicate information that's not to miss by your users, or perhaps you're running not to miss deal like this one on AppSumo and you want everybody to know this is what pop-ups are for. Notifications, and this is, I guess, true for bars and banners. We think of them as perfect for very quick notifications for users, maybe suggesting new step if you've seen them do something or not do something. Maybe you're running in-product promotion and you want to tell them about this. These types of messaging templates work well for them because they're less obtrusive. They can be easily ignored if user doesn't want to interact with them, versus, let's say, a pop-up or a slide out that takes up a very large portion of the screen. And then finally, we have a container, which is kind of a beast of its own. Essentially, it's an empty iframe where you can load images, for example, or maybe you want to embed your own HTML tag. So if you have like a custom video player, for example, or maybe if you have an interactive survey or anything else that you might have developed in another product that you want to build embed, I guess, into Tooltip, and then apply whatever segmentation and page rules and targeting and scheduling which Tooltip provides. So it's a very kind of nifty tool in order to be able to take your outside piece of code and maybe some image or video and embed it into this empty window and then position it and then target it and do all these sort of things. So I'm going to dive into this a little bit more. So let's start with, let's say, a pop-up. So you begin by selecting the type of message that you work with. Let's first talk about the things that are very common across all the messaging templates that we have. So at the top, you'll see a bar where you work with text, and you'll find all these things that are very typical: bold, italics. You can upload your own fonts or use some of the ones that we have. You can change the size of the font. Then colors, you can change the color of the background, color of your font. Alignment, you can embed links, all those sort of things. You can also resize these messages within certain templates that we provide over here. They go pretty large. So you can do this here from the top bar. And then for campaigns that support it, you can embed an image or a video. So if we click on that, it will open up an image gallery. So we provide some images, some stock images which you can use. You can also upload your own. So I have some of these uploaded over here, and they show up over here as recent. You can choose not to display an image, so you'll check that box over here, or you can add a video as well as your own image. Once you fill it up with some copy, so let's call this, a pop-up, you can choose whether you want to add buttons, and if you don't want to, you can delete them. And then something also that we allow you to do for buttons and links, which is important, is ability to link campaigns together. So let's say I want to do this via a link. I can highlight it, go embed link, and you'll find this same menu for a button. I'm going to show you that in a second. And then any link and any button inside Tooltip can do a variety of different actions. So a very simple one, of course, the default one for a link is to open a link either on your page or an external page. And you can open it either in this current tab or a new tab. But also, it can just dismiss this campaign, close it. It can show another campaign. And this can span across different pages. So if you have another campaign which you created, and that campaign is on a different page, if you link this link to that campaign, it will actually redirect the user to that page and then show that campaign. And then finally, it can run JS, which means it can execute JavaScript code, which is a very nifty tool because essentially it allows your development team to trigger whatever piece of code you may want to do and more deeply integrate Tooltip into your product or into your website. For that, we give you a small wrapper for your code, which you can install on your site, which is literally just one line of code, and we allow you to do that. The same thing happens here with the button. So if you click on this cog wheel, you can see all these actions in here as well. And here's where all the magic happens in Tooltip. So once you've actually created your campaign, you maybe added an image or your video, edit your copy, edit buttons or links if you want to do so. If you in any of the messaging templates, if you click here in the top right, this will take us into settings. And then in here, depending on the type of a campaign that you work with, we either have 4 or 5 different tabs. So triggers, this is where you actually decide who is going to see your campaign depending on what sort of actions. So by default, at the top, we have two options. So first, show this campaign in preview, which is on by default. And this allows you to preview how this campaign looks and works without leaving the editor, so you can be happy with the way everything works. You can preview it, and if so you don't like something, you can come back and actually change these settings until you're actually happy with it. Once you're actually happy with the way campaign works and looks, and you're ready to start showing it to your end users or your website visitors, then you can publish this campaign. This is very important here because we often deal with a lot of customer support queries where people write us either in our chat or email and say, I created this campaign, I've installed a piece of code, JavaScript tag that we provide for you to embed on your website, but my campaign is not running. And in 90% of the time, we come here and we check the settings, and the setting is off. So once you're ready to publish your campaign, be sure to toggle the switch to say show to users, and then it's actually going to start playing on your website. Once we got that sorted, we can figure out how we want to launch this campaign to users, and we provide a variety of pre-built triggers. So we have a click and a hover. So if you select that, what you can do is essentially bind that click action to any of your page elements. So now what I do here is going to say this. And that means that whenever a user clicks on that little title, then this campaign will trigger. Hover works in the very same way, except instead of a click, it's going to be a hover. Then we also have page load, which is typical for a lot of user onboarding scenarios, which means that as soon as user enters this page, this campaign will trigger. Then we have page scroll, which is interesting. So let's say I want to trigger this particular campaign only if user has scrolled to a particular position on the page. Let's say they're reading through your long page, and maybe you want to point their attention to something. Maybe there's a checkbox that they're likely to miss. Maybe there's some other important information, or maybe there's information that's actually pertinent to this particular section of the site that they're looking at. So you can actually do that. You can select where on the page they need to be, how far should they scroll, and then select this position, and then have the campaign trigger when they actually scroll to this particular position on the page. And I have a couple of examples for each one of these I'm going to show you those in a second. Then we have a timer. So this is exactly as it sounds. You can set a timer for how long the visitor has been on your page to trigger that particular campaign. This can be useful if, let's say, you know that a user usually takes, let's say, 10 or 20 seconds to, let's say, fill out a form. And then if it's taking them longer, you can trigger a campaign interview and say, hey, looks like you're having trouble. Maybe you have some common questions about how to fill this out. We have answers for you right here. So this can be useful for that type of scenario. And then we have a page exit, which is often used for a lot of marketing scenarios. So if user has come to your page and they're about to leave, so they hover and they reach for that X to close a tab, and then we can trigger that campaign on page exit on that action. And then finally, we have user idle. So this one looks at user activity, so how they scroll, how they move their cursor or mouse. And if they go idle for, again, a certain period of time, which you can set over here, we can trigger a campaign based off of that, which, again, allows you to create different types of interaction scenarios in response to user actions. On top of that, we also provide an API, which allows you to override these triggers and create your own based on a number of different parameters that's happening in your app. So you can actually create some of your own. Now, once we've decided what's going to trigger this campaign, for this particular example, I'm just going to keep it to page load, we can decide where do we want to show this campaign to users, meaning which particular page. So by default, this is set to just this hash over here, but that means that we're on the home page. And the reason why we have this instead of the full URL address, which you can also have, is because by default, Tooltip is domain agnostic. And we've done this specifically for use cases where you may have essentially the very same website or the same app, but you create either subdomains for each one of your users, or maybe you allow your customers to host your product on their own unique URLs, or maybe their own unique domains. So that way, if we target it like this, we don't look at the top level domains, we don't look at demo dot, whatever there is, but look at rather at the page structure after the top level domain. So that way you can actually create one project, which is essentially a collection of your in-app messaging campaigns, and reuse it across all of these different copies of your app without having to rebuild it for every single one copy. So you can target it like this by only specifying. So let's say if we have demo.signalary.com / let's say page, and we want to target page, all we need to do is basically write page like so. Or if we erase it, it's just going to be the home page. And you can target multiple of these pages. So we can provide these different fields, so you can target a number of these pages. Something that we also support is what we call regular expressions. So oftentimes we see our customers create unique URLs for each one of their users, which is reflected, again, in the address of the page. So let's say Facebook is a good example, because you go to facebook.com, then you have /, and then you have your username. So obviously the very same page, underlying page, is the same, and just that the username changes. So the way we handle this is by replacing that variable part in the address with an asterisk, or essentially a star. So let's say if you want to target, facebook.com, and then this is going to be my name, so it's going to be Roman, but instead of targeting Roman, you want to just target everyone that meets that particular criteria. We would just replace it with the star like that. And it works in the very same way. So let's say if this was, a part of that, and then there's going to be another page, just replace the variable. So that's sort of how it works. Additionally, you can decide whether you want to just target all pages regardless of where user comes. So we've been asked this a number of times. Let's say you want to show a campaign to user that comes to your website for the very first time, regardless of the page where they land. If let's say you run some external promo campaigns. So you can just target all pages of your site, and then regardless of what page they land on, they'll be able to see that particular campaign. Or you may want to exclude certain pages, and let's say, okay, I want to target all pages, but I want to exclude certain pages. And again, you can enter a number of these pages, including a regular expressions pattern, to exclude these pages from the pages that this campaign will target. So once we've decided on that, and for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to leave it to homepage, we can decide whether you want to show this to desktop users or mobile users or both. Let's do that both. And then finally, you can decide how often you want to show this campaign to users. And we're actually expanding this section. This is already under development to include more options based on the feedback that we receive. But for right now, as of today, there's 2 options in here. So until closed, which means that whenever a user meaningfully interacts with this campaign, and there's several ways they can do this. So in this campaign, we have a close icon to dismiss that campaign in the top right corner. We have a link, and then we have a button. So whenever they interact with any one of these menu items, we know that the user has interacted with that campaign, and we will not be showing this campaign to user when they come back again, even if these conditions are met. And then the second option is, of course, every time, which is useful for, let's say, hotspots, or maybe if you want to trigger some help on demand, you want to be able to show this every single time user interact with that particular trigger. So you can set it to every time. Once we figure that out, we can move on to segmentation. So we can either target all of your users or website visitors, or we can target a particular segment. And we have some criteria that we can natively track, which includes location, device OS that the user is using, the browser, a certain number or certain cookies that they may or may not have in their browser language, which is useful for targeting users in different languages with different language content, referral URL, which is where you can specify what sort of address the user is coming from to your website. So let's say if you're running an external marketing campaign, let's say on Facebook or maybe LinkedIn or Twitter or somewhere else, and if users are landing on your page, having come, let's say, from AppSumo to tooltip.io, then we can write this in here and target those specific users. This is useful, again, for running deals like AppSumo or running promotions on Product Hunt. So that's that. A user activity, which is we can track when we first seen or last seen a user more or less than a certain period of time. One caveat to this solution is that this works off of our own cookies that we set. So if you have some existing users which you had before you installed Tooltip, you might want to use a different trigger, such as your own cookies. Or a user attribute. So this is something that we get asked a lot. So you can actually use whatever data you natively track on your users and then pass it to Tooltip via our API. And I'll show you a link to documentation on how to do that. It's actually fairly simple. It works in real time. And then whenever you pass this data to us, these fields are going to become populated with the data, and then I have this test in here, and then you'll be able to create different sort of filters based on that data. So if this parameter equals something, not equals, contains, doesn't contain, is set, is not set, and so on and so forth, depending on the type of data which you can pass in, which can be a string, a number, it could be a Boolean, which is either a true, false, it can be a date, can be a list of things. So your developers probably know exactly what these things are because all of them classify data on your users, such as their user status, and number of purchases that they made, or anything like that, in a variety of these different formats. So you can pass that data in and then target your users based on a number of these parameters or a combination of these. And you can target them either by all of these parameters, so users that meet all of these criteria, or just any one of them. Once you've built let's say we do user type, and then we have something else in here. So once you build all this out, you can actually save this as an audience. When you save this, this is going to become available to you, and you will be able to reuse this in other campaigns which you run. So this is, again, a nifty little option. And then finally, something that we asked about fairly often is about this ignore and preview option. So here's how this works. So let's say you target users in, I don't know, let's say Albania, but you don't live in Albania, but you know you have users there, and you create this campaign. When you go into preview, what we're going to do is we're going to emulate how it's actually going to look and work for your end user. So we're going to check for Albania as your IP address. And so if you're not in Albania, it's not going to play for you, which may create some confusion. So you can choose to ignore all these settings in preview if you just want to see how the campaign is going to look and work. So if people click on buttons, whether it redirects, but necessarily whether these conditions are met. So you can do this in here. And then moving on to scheduling. This is, again, one of the features that we see used quite a bit. It also has ignore mode turned on by default. So you can schedule this campaign to start running in the future. By default, we take the very next day from the one that we're creating. So today is July 1st. It's set to July 2nd for 12 noon. in whatever time zone that you're actually in. This is my current time zone. And you can start showing this on a particular date, time, and a particular time zone, and then have it run indefinitely, or define where do you want this campaign to stop. And again, you can set the date, the time, and the time zone. And within this time frame, you can also decide whether you want to run this campaign on every day of the week, or maybe you want to select only a specific day of the week, which can be useful if you run recurring campaigns on one day of the week, or maybe only on the weekends. We have some customers in the sports industry, horse racing and stuff like that, where you have a horse race every Saturday, for example. So they utilize this particular feature over here as well. And then finally, we have styling option, which, depending on the type of campaign that you work with, may have different settings in here. But by default, we have background shading, which you can turn on, which helps to kind of focus user attention on it. So when the campaign plays, it sort of grays out the background, and it helps to focus user attention on a particular message. And then we also allow you to hide the close icon. So this can be sort of annoying sometimes. So you always need to think about, whether this is right from the UI standpoint. But if you provide an alternative way to close this message, let's say via a link or a button, then you can decide that you maybe want to close this campaign. And we're also expanding this with the ability to play sound when this campaign triggers, which again can help drive user attention to it, but should be used with caution. And with some other campaigns, there are additional settings in here that are available, but they're fairly minor, so no need to kind of spend their time going to that. So let's say we've done all of this. We created our pop-up, we filled it out with an image, with a copy, we set up a button in there, and now we set up triggers, segmentation, scheduling, all the styling options. So I'm just going to do something very simple: page load on this specific homepage, desktop and mobile browser, and let's do this every single time. We click done, we click save, and now we name this campaign. Let's call it a pop-up, and we can preview how this looks and works for your end user. And for that, we're going to go and click on preview mode, and now it's going to execute the setting. And here's our pop-up playing over here. And so there we go. So we can preview how it works and looks. Now we can click out of preview mode, and all our campaigns are stored in this campaigns panel. So if you click on that, you'll find all of them are sorted depending by the campaign type. So tooltips and hotspots at the top, and then notifications, pop-ups, bars, slide outs, banners, and containers. So I have some of these already pre-built, and I'm going to show you a couple of scenarios that we see our customers use and be fairly successful with. And when you come here, you can open this campaign to edit. When you hover over it, you can duplicate this campaign, which can be useful if you have the very same copy, but maybe you want to change the date on it, or maybe you want to target different pages, or maybe you want to target different users. So you can actually duplicate this campaign, and then it's going to show up there, and then open it for editing. And then you can either archive or delete this campaign altogether. And the way you switch between archived campaigns and active campaigns is through this drop down over here. Something that we also allow you to do here is very quickly see all-time performance for this particular campaign. So since you've published this campaign, we'll show you quick numbers such as impressions, number of people that have closed this campaign, number of people who've clicked this campaign, if you set up a meaningful interaction trigger inside a button or a link. So let's say if you have a pop-up, and then in that pop-up, which we're using, we have a button, but that button also closes that pop-up, so all is going to be counted as closed. Only if you have any sort of meaningful call to action, a redirect, open another link, or do something else, it's going to be counted as clicked. And then if you want to see detailed information about the performance of this campaign, you can click on this link, and we're just going to take you to our dashboard where you can see detailed information about this campaign. I'm going to talk about it in a second. From here, you can also very quickly turn this campaign off in preview, and then publish or unpublish this campaign if you'd like to do so. And then at the very top, you can unpublish all these campaigns or publish all these campaigns if you create a bunch of them and you want them all to go live at the same time. You can also utilize search, which is going to look through the name and the content of this campaign if you have lots of these created, like I do over here. So this is what you do here. Now, here's the second part of the product. So let's say you've created all of these campaigns through the Google Chrome extension. And you're now ready to start showing this campaign on your site to your users. In order to do that, you actually need to install a small piece of JavaScript code, which you provide here via this button, as well as in the dashboard. So you can very quickly copy it from here and maybe show it to your developer, or maybe you want to install it on your WordPress site. It's actually fairly easy. So we made it possible to work if you place it basically wherever within the head or body tag, even though ideally we recommend placing it at the very end of the head tag. So just before the closing head tag of that section. So you can copy it and then you just can close it. So if you need it, it's right over here. And then finally, something that we use internally, let's say you're working with a product, you're working with some sort of a campaign, maybe you have a question, you can click here in our Help Center, which we've built into the Google Chrome extension, which is going to show you a list of top help articles about the types of campaigns, and then customizing them, setting triggers, page rules, display settings, options for button links, segmentation, scheduling, as well as a few use cases that we sort of see our customers use. All of these contain video, so if you don't want to read this long copy, then you can just watch a video from here. And then finally, if you watch the video, you read through the text, but you still have more questions, there's a chat down below here, so you can immediately start talking to a live human being. We take turns manning this chat. I do this quite often as well. So if you have a particular question about something that's working or not working, you can actually talk to us and we'll be able to answer right away while you're in the product. So now I'm going to jump in and show you a couple of use cases before going into the dashboard. So I have some of these already pre-built. So let's say we want to do something with this sneaker. So I created this tooltip. I want to say this is our best-selling model, and only today we're running a promotion with a 15% discount. So what I've done here is I've actually placed it on this picture of the sneaker, and I've set it up to work on page scroll when users scroll to this particular position on the page. Now I'm going to turn it on in preview so I can actually see how everything works. I'm going to unpublish it because maybe I don't want to show it on my website just yet, and then all these things kind of sort of work as you'd expect them to. Final step is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to disable that pop-up which we've built so it's not annoying us. It should be over here at the very bottom. So I'm going to turn this off. So now we're in preview mode and we're going to scroll down and we should see that tooltip over here. So this can be useful if your users are scrolling through the page and you want to draw their attention to something. You can trigger this into view, and this can be very powerful. And then from here, I've actually embedded the link. So if they're, if you want to place an order, they can do this by simply clicking on that. And I think I have another campaign here that's playing, but it's empty. So let me see. There's probably a container. I'm going to turn this off real quick. I'm just going to unpublish all of them so that they're not interfering here. Yep. And let's see, this, all of that we don't need. This is actually a fun one. All right, there's a calendar widget. Now let's look at a couple of other campaigns that are linked together. So I'm going to do is go to this tooltip. I'm going to turn this off because we don't need that now. I've already shown you that. And let's look at a couple pop-ups. So where is it? Let's do this one, for example. Let me turn this on, see if that's the one. Okay, page load, specific page. Okay, so here's what I've done here. Let's say you want to introduce your users to some new feature which you've built. So what I've done here is I've created 3 pop-ups which I've linked together via this button. So as you can see, it's a select a target. We go into this, it's actually gonna be able to show me all these different pop-ups that I have over here, so I can select any one of these and link them together. But we don't need to do that right now because it's already built in. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to say, look, we didn't just create this new feature, but we actually want to show you very quickly while we have your attention what this feature is about. So if user really wants to see what it is and you click on the show me button, I want to show them 2 other kind of pop-ups that tell a bit more about this particular feature, which can be useful. And we found that this works really well in terms of new feature adoption. If you quickly can communicate the value of that new feature to your users. So if they sort of engage with it right now, then they'll be able to go and quickly, look at that particular feature. So I'm going to show you how that works. So now we're going to go to preview mode. That pop-up is set to appear on page load. Here it is. Now if I click this, there's the second pop-up, and as you can see, there's nice little animation in here. And then what else? That's it. And if they're happy with it, I can embed try it out now into this button and actually take them to that particular page, and maybe execute a small piece of JavaScript code to make sure that they sort of opted in. So you can do something like this. And this is built using that link feature where you can link campaigns together. In the very same fashion, if you want to do a short product tour with, let's say, tooltips, you can do it in the very same way by linking tooltips together, and then you can take them from step by step. And we've been asked a lot about whether you can do user onboarding, like step-by-step tours. You can, even though we don't really recommend it, because we found through user research is that if you build a very long tour, 4 out of 5 users usually drop off at around step 3. This is why you see LinkedIn and Facebook mostly use tooltip tours to kind of show users around when they sort of change navigation. Maybe there's something else that they released and they say, hey, there's this new button. If you click on it, there's going to be it. So you usually go for about 1 to 3 kind of tooltips at a time. But instead, what you can use is slide outs. And this is something I wanted to show you next before we go and look at the dashboard. So let's turn this off. We'll look at some slide outs. We really like slide outs, and as you can see, we sort of built our own help center based on this slide out. Let's look at this one, for example. I'm gonna turn this one on and see if this is okay. So this is homepage, page load. All right. So what I've done here is I wanted to sort of build a small FAQ section that can be pertinent to this page that the user is looking at, or a number of tasks which they may do here. So let's say I put together a few help articles on reading charts, creating widgets, setting up reports, and building tables and something like that. And what I can do here is using a click trigger, link it to any sort of page element. So you can have an empty link that says help, which can be pertinent to this particular page. So if they click on that, you can immediately trigger this particular slide out. And what I've done here is I've linked those other slide outs to this one via these buttons. So if I click on reading charts, it's going to show me that second slide out over here. And you can embed images in here or animated videos if you want to explain something. And the beauty of this solution is that it's always available to your user. You can trigger this the first time they arrive in your app and on your site, but then also make it easier for them to revisit at any point of time if need be. So you can actually educate them like this, again, by linking these campaigns together. So there's a lot of versatility in terms of these scenarios which you can build. I'm not going to talk about all these sort of things to kind of not take up all your time, but basically you can go ahead and try these out yourself. And then the second sort of part of the product is you obviously want to see how all these campaigns look, and not only how they look and work, but also how they perform. Do they actually work for your users? So this is our dashboard. So when you arrive on your dashboard, you see a couple of tabs in here. The main tab is projects. And again, a project is essentially a collection of your in-app messaging campaigns, which is associated with a particular domain. And you can actually reassign these domains. So here's my project. I can see that the player is online. It's working. I can view the player for this particular project. I can delete this. And if I click on that, it's going to take us inside that project. And then we'll be able to view the campaigns which belong to this project. We can search for it. We can sort it. By default, it's sorted by active first, the campaigns that have been published. And so here are all these campaigns which I have. The fact that it's blue means that they've been published. And then I can quickly see the name of that particular campaign, the type, the pages where it's shown, and then impressions, closed, clicked. So let's find that tooltip that we've been running. Let's see, where is it? Can't find it. Maybe it's did I turn this off? I'm sorry, I forgot what it's called. Anyway, so what I wanted to show you is that now we can look at more detailed information about this particular campaign. So now if I hover over it and click on it, you'll see the performance of this campaign in this chart. So this is a demo site. Nobody comes to this website. Nobody sees these campaigns, so there's no data. But basically, you'll be able to see how everything have been visited. So again, number of people who've seen this particular campaign, number of people who clicked it, number of people who closed on either a daily basis, the last 30 days, last week, or even last 24 hours. And this information is updated every single minute, or you can select a custom date range as well. Once you're happy with reviewing all this information, you can move into the audience tab. And in the audience tab, this is where we show information on users that have actually engaged with your campaign, including location, so the type of countries where they come from, their device information, such as their operating system, either this is a mobile phone or a desktop computer, and what sort of browser that they were using, and also we show you time of day of engagement. So when did they see this particular campaign? So all this information is here, so you get sort of understand your audience a little better. And then if you have this information, so let's say you see that most users that respond to that particular campaign, let's say, are from Canada, then from your next campaign, you can target only users from Canada. Or if you see that most users come from mobile, maybe you want to do a mobile optimized campaign just for that. Or if you see that people usually come to your website and engage with that particular campaign in the morning, you can again target it via scheduling. So you can see information on that over here. From here, you can also reassign this domain. So let's say you want to move this project from this particular domain to a different domain. You can do this in here. And the benefit of this solution is that once you do that, then you can navigate to your new address. You can launch the editor, the editor, which is the Google Chrome extension. The Google Chrome extension will immediately recognize that domain and let you in and let you edit the campaigns on that particular website. So that's that. And then a couple other tabs in here. So account. This is where the most important thing that you do here is where you access your teammates or other users that you may want to grant access to your projects is from here. So this can be both your teammates inside your organization. This could be your clients as well. So let's say I have the one project and I can add different users in here. The only caveat is that when you add them, they already need to have an account with us. So you need to tell them to create an account with Tooltip first. Once they do, you'll be able to enter the email address in here and add that user. And when you do add that user, you can decide whether you want to grant access to all of your projects, only certain projects. So I only have one project in here, so it's the only one that shows up. And then access can be done in a variety, in two roles. So they can either view the performance data, which is useful for, let's say if you're in production and you have people in marketing, and people in marketing need to see how these campaigns are performing and then use the data to crunch numbers and do their other job. Or you can give somebody a view and edit access where they can actually download the Google Chrome extension. They can edit your existing campaigns. They create new campaigns. So they can do all sorts of manipulation with segmentation and all these sort of things, but they can't add other users. So you end up being the ultimate admin for these projects, and you can add different users in here. And then finally, we have billing data, which to AppSumo users is going to be irrelevant because you have a great lifetime deal. So you don't need to look at that. You can change your password and do things like that. If you need to reinstall the editor for some reason, you can actually do this from here. We provide you a link, so you don't have to go and look for it in the Chrome store. Just kind of download it from here. We also provide a link to our API documentation from here. So if you ever want to show this information with your developers on implementing custom triggers or passing in user data, all of the information is in here as well. So this has been sort of a quick rundown, even though it took like 30 minutes maybe to show you through the product, but maybe we can open up to questions now. Over to you, Chris. Hello? I can't hear you, just in case there's nothing coming through. So I'm going to pause the screen share now, see if we can come back. Okay, Chris is working on it. If you can hear me, which I don't know if you can, but Chris is working on restoring the sound back. All right, great. So while you can hear me, but you can't hear Chris, and he's working this out, maybe I can answer some of the... Yeah, we can hear you and see you now.
All right, sorry about that. So the first question is, does Tooltip only work on Chrome?
Tooltip, okay, so let me clarify this. We have a Google Chrome extension, which is necessary for you as the editor to create these campaigns. So this extension is available for Chrome only at the moment, but your users don't need to install anything. And once you install our JavaScript tag on your website, your users can view your campaigns in any browser that they are already using.
Awesome. All right. Next question is, what is considered an active user, and how can one calculate or estimate the expected monthly active users?
Yeah, okay. So an active user is a user that logs in to your site or application at least once a month. So it works, that metric works better for SaaS applications where you actually have registered users that actually log in into your app and then show an activity. To answer your question, if we have let's say you have 3,000 users registered in your application, only 1,000 of them log in this month, and they see an unlimited number of campaigns. To us, that is one active user. Let's say you have visitors that come here to our website and they're anonymous. What we do then is we actually use a combination of cookies and a few other parameters, like we look at server requests, we look at their IP address and a few other things to differentiate whether this is a unique user or it's a returning user. And we only count the unique users. So only unique users that come to your website, it doesn't matter if they return, they're still counted as one. And again, it doesn't matter how many campaigns they see. So that would be a unique user for us.
Awesome. All right. The next one is the chat 24/7? I'm not sure. Does that mean your help chat on your site?
No, it's not 24/7. We don't work on Sundays. And we try to cover, we are based in Europe, so we try to cover 5 a.m. US Eastern time to about 7 p.m. US Eastern time. But we have a help center available. You can also send us an email. We found that the help center which we created, and I'm going to show you that right now by sharing my screen. So if you head over to tooltip.io help, you'll find, and we actually use our own tool here. So if you click on frequent questions, we found, and I kid you not, 86% of customer support queries which we receive can be answered via one of these articles over here, such as the ones that you asked. Monthly active users, how do you count that? And whether can I use this with WordPress? Can I create a guided tour? So on and so forth.
All right.
Yep.
Let's see, the next one. What is your experience on number of unique users on an average website? I imagine that's going to be a difficult one to answer.
Oh, it varies wildly. So I'll give you an example. We have some websites that barely see a few thousand a month. And then some of our largest customers, so we serve, for those of you in Canada, you should know this, Loblaws, which is the #1 grocery retail chain in Canada. They have us installed on a little over 30 of their websites, and we see a traffic of 10 million plus per website a day. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Is there I wonder, let's see. Next one, Ivan, does it integrate with WordPress so I can target logged in users?
Sure. Yes. WordPress. So any site builder, WordPress being one of them, even though it's a little bit more sophisticated than some other ones, that allow you to add and execute third-party JavaScript on inside the head or body section will work with Tooltip. And yes, if you can pass in your parameter to us, you can target your users on your WordPress site. No problem.
That is the last one. Who else has any? If you got any questions, feel free to drop them in. We got a couple minutes left. I'm gonna see if there's anything in the comments, but let's see. All right. Ivan says from Norm, Okay, I guess we're helping other folks out with their questions. For a trigger segmentation, can you integrate with someone like ActiveCampaign and only trigger for contacts that have a specific tag?
So yes and no. The question is, can you pass the information about that tag to us? Because Tooltip, for security and performance reasons, is isolated from your app. So we use iframes in order to avoid any sort of styling conflicts with your site. And also, again, for security reasons. So if we go down, you don't go down, your page or your app is not impacted in any sort of way. And then if something happens and we get hacked, nobody can actually do something with your page. For that particular reason, we don't really know what's happening inside your app unless you tell us that. And the way you tell us that is you pass that information in. So if you have this particular audience in ActiveCampaign, you need to let us know how we can identify that audience. So if you have that tag and you can pass that tag to Tooltip, then sure, you can do this. The only question is to figure out whether you can pass that tag, because again, ActiveCampaign is a third-party product which you're using. So that's the only question that I have.
All right. Next up, another one through Ivan from Norm. He asks, do browser ad blockers prevent the notifications or the tooltip from showing?
No, again, because we use iframes, and iframes is it's fairly old and a foundational technology for the web. They are not currently blocked by any of the major ad blockers. No, we have not seen that.
Okay.
But that's not the reason for you to abuse them. Please be good to your users.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Igor asks, I created a hotspot. I don't find where I click to create a second one.
You do. So I'm going to share my screen with you quickly again. So you do everything through the plus menu. So I'm going to show it to you. Let me know if you can see my screen. Chris, can you confirm?
Let's see. There it is. I'm just making it big for everyone. All right.
Yeah. So all your existing campaigns are stored in this panel over here. So this is where they are. And if you want to create a new one, just click out of that, click plus, and again, select a new hotspot. And there you go. You can place it. There it is. And again, once you've created it, they're all in here in this campaign panel, and you can open up for editing. Does that make sense? Well, you can't answer that. So
Igor, let us know if you got. Igor says yes, it makes sense. Cool.
we can pick it up in our live chat or over email. Sure.
And the last question I'm seeing from Jackson is about Facebook ads. It says Facebook ads don't get approved to pages with pop-ups. So does this restriction apply to your pop-ups as well, or to sliders and the other tooltip types? I didn't know that. Is that true? Facebook ads don't get approved if there's pop-ups?
Well, technically, we're not considered to, again, because we use a slightly different technology for a pop-up. It's not an actual HTML. Think of it as another window which you show on top of your website, just another layer. And a lot of products cannot actually read inside of it. So if you specify a particular page where you have one of our pop-ups or slide outs installed, I'm not actually sure that Facebook can look into it and decide that this is an actual pop-up or slide out. But again, we don't look at this as a way to abuse the system and then just litter your page with all these pop-up ads. In fact, we actually have a fail-safe mechanism where we don't allow you to serve more than 3 campaigns at the same time on one page, even though the golden rule is 1 campaign per page or per view. Because what happens is when you show several campaigns at the same time, they sort of start competing for user attention, and in the end, none of them gets that attention. So a user just is immediately, basically revolts against your page and starts closing them down all immediately, or just leaves your page. So don't do that.
The last one I am seeing from Ken. Can you do? Oh, we got a couple more coming through. Can we duplicate a campaign?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to cover that briefly. So let's go in here in the campaigns panel. This is where it says copy. I'm going to click on copy. It's going to throw me all the way down. So here's the copy of our campaign. As you can see, it has the same name, which I can rename, but it's got no data because this is a brand new campaign. And this is a duplicate. There we go.
Easy enough. And can you do that across domains?
Yes, you can do this across domains. So let's say that you need to do in the dashboard. So let's go into dashboard. Let's go into projects. Let's go into our project. So I click on that, and here where it says duplicate. So if I click that, I can select where I can move or copy this campaign from this project to another project. I only have one, but you select, and then you can select whether you want to copy content, triggers, segmentation, scheduling, or just all of these sort of things. So the stuff that we can carry over, we will carry over, which is images or any fonts that you've uploaded, the triggers, the segmentation, including the audiences that you may created, the scheduling, all that's going to be carried over. The only caveat is if that different domain is tied to a different URL and has different pages, you will need to adjust those manually. But to answer your question, in short, yes, you can duplicate campaigns between projects.
SC asks, do the campaigns show visitor IP addresses?
No, we don't collect the data on our individual users. We are GDPR compliant, and as part of that, we basically aggregate data that we collect in terms of performance. So what we do is when we look at your users, we take their IP address, we figure out what location that is, and then we basically put them in a bucket that belongs to a particular location, and we discard it immediately. We actually haven't been asked to collect that sort of data. So if this is something you'd like to do, maybe you would love to know about your use case and then put it on a public roadmap to see if other users may want to do that as well.
Excellent. All right, Roman, we are at the end of our time and the end of our questions, but thank you so much for hopping on and doing this walkthrough. This was great. I think people got a lot out of it. I saw a bunch of people in the comments saying they're heading over to buy it. So if everyone could give Roman a big round of applause for taking the time, give him some thanks for jumping on and walking us through this. Big appreciation. If you guys have further questions, again, feel free to hit them up in the chat. You can check out Tooltip over in AppSumo. You can ask questions on the page there, but thank you guys for joining us. Really appreciate you guys coming on. And Roman, thank you. You got any last words before we hop off?
No, I just wanted to thank you, Chris, and I wanted to thank all the people who have already commented and asked questions on AppSumo page. We now have almost 100 questions asked, so this again has become a great resource. So you can go and check it out, and we'd love, if you bought the product, we'd love to read about your reviews.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. And yes, I will be, someone just asked, will the talk be recorded? I will be sending out the replay to this later this afternoon. So if you missed anything, you got to jump out earlier, you came in late, you will get that as well. But yeah, that is all I have for you guys. So thank you so much, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you, Roman.
Yes, thank you. Have a good day.
All right.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.